Imagine you are on Little St. James Island in 2001, and you watch a thin, blonde girl walk through the door of a blue-striped building in a secluded area of the island. She doesn't know that she is not in a conventional mansion, but in a place where one of the most abhorrent acts a 16-year-old girl could experience is about to take place, at the hands of the infamous Jeffrey Epstein. This is the story of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, Jeffrey Epstein's favorite girl, as told through her own words, court filings, and her posthumous memoir, Nobody's Girl. Virginia Giuffre was one of the most well-known survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking operation. But before the headlines, before the lawsuits, before the names, she was a vulnerable teenager looking for stability. Virginia Giuffre, born into a modest family in Sacramento, California, had always wanted comfort, elegance, and stability. Her father worked repairing air conditioners at the Mar-a-Lago Club, Donald Trump's social club reserved for the wealthiest and most powerful Americans, a world entirely different from the one she had grown up in. Thanks to a recommendation from her father, she had managed to secure a job as a receptionist assistant at the spa, serving tea, restocking towels, and smiling at clients who came to relax and indulge in the luxury of the club. To Virginia, this was everything she had ever hoped for. She believed that if she could become a professional massage therapist, she could finally escape the uncertainty of her life and secure her future. She purchased an anatomy book, never imagining that this book would become a key that opened the door to a nightmare. Everything seemed to be going perfectly until one day, outside the club, Virginia noticed a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows following her for 2 blocks. The car parked at the entrance, and from the back seat stepped an elegantly dressed woman with short hair, carrying a designer handbag worth more than most middle-class family cars. The woman approached the reception desk with a polished British accent, introducing herself as Ghislaine Maxwell. She smiled warmly and immediately struck up a conversation about the massage book Virginia was reading. Maxwell told her she knew a millionaire businessman, a member of Mar-a-Lago, who was looking for a massage therapist to accompany him on business trips around the world. Maxwell explained that if Virginia managed to impress him during the interview that very night, the man would pay for her studies at a medical institute before she began work. The opportunity sounded almost too good to be true, but Maxwell's calm confidence, charm, and sophistication made it feel legitimate. Virginia, excited and hopeful, did not see the danger lurking beneath the surface. Many of Jeffrey Epstein's victims later described the same dynamic. They didn't fully understand who Epstein was, but Maxwell's presence, her accent, her upbringing, her polished image, created a powerful illusion of safety. Coming from a woman, this veneer of legitimacy was deeply manipulative, and it became a critical component of how Epstein's operation functioned. Hours later, Virginia's father drove her through a neighborhood of enormous mansions and impeccably clean streets. She trembled with anticipation as they passed houses that looked like they had been lifted straight from a movie. Soon, they arrived at 358 El Brillo Way, a completely white mansion of nearly 1,000 square meters, valued at $18 million. Nervously, she got out of the car and rang the doorbell. Maxwell opened it immediately, almost as if she had been waiting for her. She introduced herself to Virginia's father, thanking him and assuring him that his daughter would be in good hands and returned home safely that same night. Maxwell was an expert at appearances, extremely charismatic, and always surrounded by powerful people. The last thing you would think was that she was a predator. With that, he left, and Virginia followed Maxwell into a house that would mark the beginning of a series of experiences she could never forget. The hallways were lined with strange and unsettling artwork, explicit paintings, and sculptures designed to evoke discomfort and intimacy. Virginia tried to focus on Maxwell's instructions, but it was impossible to ignore the oppressive atmosphere. Maxwell led her up the staircase, turned right, and opened the door to Jeffrey Epstein's bedroom. Inside, a man lay naked on a massage table. He lifted his head, revealing thick eyebrows and a Cheshire cat grin, and said, "You can call me Jeffrey." Epstein exchanged a complicit smile with Maxwell, a gesture that seemed small at first, but would later reveal itself as a warning of what was to come. Maxwell began instructing Virginia on massage techniques, explaining how to use oils and lotions, how to maintain one hand on the client's body at all times, and how to avoid startling him. Virginia tried to focus before starting the massage, but she couldn't ignore the fact that there was a completely naked man in front of her. She asked Maxwell, "Shouldn't he have a towel?" Maxwell replied casually, "Relax, don't miss this opportunity." At first, it appeared legitimate. Epstein and Maxwell asked her simple questions about her life, like how many siblings she had, as if trying to break the ice. Desperate for the opportunity, she opened up. She explained that she had been homeless, that she had been abused, and that this job felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance. She would later realize that this honesty revealed exactly what they were looking for, someone vulnerable. Everything began to seem more logical, and Maxwell's calm demeanor eased Virginia's suspicions, until they reached Epstein's lower back. Virginia instinctively skipped that area, but Maxwell told her it was important not to skip any part of the body, otherwise blood circulation would be affected. Virginia followed Maxwell's movements without thinking too much. But soon, the questions grew intrusive and personal. He asked about birth control and pressured her to describe her first sexual experiences. Virginia, horrified, tried to evade the questions, telling him that her first time had been against her will. Epstein reacted not with shame or remorse, but with laughter, calling her a naughty girl. Virginia was stunned. 30 minutes passed like this. Every instinct told her something was wrong, but Maxwell's calm demeanor reassured her that this was normal, that she was overreacting. The subtle, manipulative control was relentless. Then Epstein turned over, and everything changed. Virginia stepped back in fear, while Maxwell acted as if nothing was wrong, placing her hand on Epstein's chest and saying they needed to redirect blood flow away from his heart. She distracted Virginia by talking about massage oils and lotions, as if everything happening was normal. Then Epstein exchanged a glance with Maxwell and winked. At that moment, the atmosphere changed completely. The abuse began right away, involving both Epstein and Maxwell. Maxwell began removing her clothes and did the same to Virginia. That night, Virginia was wearing childlike underwear, decorated with small hearts. Epstein and Maxwell laughed, clearly pleased. The last thing she remembered was Epstein mocking her, saying, "How cute. You still wear little girl underwear." The younger she appeared, the better it seemed to be for them. The abuse was reinforced by payment. After the session, Virginia was given $200 and driven home. The financial reward reframed the trauma as work, making it feel acceptable, even justified. The shame set in immediately. Virginia remembers sitting on the floor of her shower, crying uncontrollably. Having already lived on the streets, she tried to rationalize what had happened. She told herself that maybe this was the lesser of two evils. There was the promise of education, of stability. Maybe this was simply how the world worked. If abuse had followed her throughout her life, perhaps this was just life. Within weeks, Epstein and Maxwell told Virginia to quit her job at Mar-a-Lago. They informed her that she would be traveling with them as their personal masseuse. Virginia's life became a cycle of exploitation, travel, and repeated exposure to men in positions of immense power. Epstein and Maxwell would send her to other wealthy men, politicians, and influential figures from around the world. It was March 2001, during a trip to London. Maxwell entered Virginia's room, unusually cheerful. Jokingly, she told her she would live a Cinderella story and meet a charming prince. Without further explanation, she took Virginia shopping at London's most exclusive stores, buying her a Burberry handbag and an elegant Chanel dress. Later, Maxwell told her she needed to look her best because they were going out with someone important. That night, someone knocked on the apartment door. Virginia opened it to find Prince Andrew, the favorite son of Queen Elizabeth II. Virginia was wearing a crop top that exposed her stomach, inspired by pop stars like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. Maxwell excitedly asked Prince Andrew, "Guess how old she is?" He replied, 17. Maxwell laughed and said, "Exactly. Maybe we'll have to replace her in a few months." Later, at the prince's residence, Virginia was left alone with him. What began as a polite interaction quickly turned into coercion. She was forced into situations that she could not consent to. He ordered her into a bathtub in an aggressive manner. What followed were unspeakable acts that cannot be described in this video. To give an idea, the prince left her a $1,000 tip the next day. Maxwell and Epstein orchestrated these experiences with precision, surrounding her with luxury and illusion while manipulating her vulnerabilities. Every aspect of the environment, the decor, the costumes, the attention to detail, was designed to condition and control her. Virginia and Prince Andrew met 2 more times after that. The second was at Epstein's New York mansion, where the prince was photographed and filmed with other girls. The third was on Epstein's private island, where, according to Virginia, the prince engaged in these acts surrounded by 8 girls younger than her. The girls had been recruited by Jean-Luc Brunel, a businessman who owned 2 modeling agencies in France that had received funding from Epstein for years. Virginia's life became trapped in a world of power and decay. In 2019, Prince Andrew gave a disastrous interview to the BBC, attempting to deny Virginia's accusations with absurd excuses. He claimed the photo with her was fake because he doesn't hug people, denied the nightclub story, and even said he couldn't sweat while dancing. In 2021, Prince Andrew reached an out-of-court settlement with Virginia, leading her to drop the lawsuit. She tried to rebuild her life, but later began displaying erratic behavior online. She shared private struggles, marital conflicts, and posted photos showing severe injuries after a car accident under unclear circumstances. The mechanisms of grooming were both psychological and emotional. Maxwell's polished presence created a veneer of safety, masking the danger. Epstein's wealth and charisma commanded obedience. The combination was devastatingly effective. Virginia's sense of self was eroded gradually. Every small gesture of validation from them, every payment or compliment, reinforced the idea that she was complicit in her own exploitation. Returning to them became inevitable, not out of desire, but because she was trapped by invisible chains of fear, manipulation, and dependency. She reflected on what she would say if she could speak to her 16-year-old self. Her answer was simple: run for your life. But at that age, she was deeply intimidated. These were powerful people, and she felt trapped. The lawyer representing many of Epstein's victims described this control as invisible chains. The girls were not physically restrained, but they were psychologically bound. Critics often ask why they returned. The answer lies in power. These were not people to cross. Epstein and Maxwell possessed immense wealth, influence, and the capacity to destroy lives if they chose to. And the girls knew it. Years later, Virginia came forward, naming Epstein, Maxwell, and the men who had abused her. She explained that victims are not born. They are made through silence, neglect, and the unchecked abuse of power. Even after Epstein's death, she continued to demand accountability, shedding light on a system that allowed the elite to operate above the law. Her story revealed not just her personal tragedy, but a broader truth. There exists a network of wealth and influence that protects predators and silences victims. For survivors of childhood sexual abuse, experiences like this reinforce a devastating belief that their value exists only in providing pleasure to others. Under those conditions, returning can feel inevitable, especially when there is even the faintest hope that something good might come from it. Feeling like nothing is one of the most destructive emotional states a person can endure. Tragically, Virginia Giuffre's life ended in April 2025 when she was found dead in her home, an apparent suicide that many found deeply unsettling. Just years earlier, she had publicly shared that she had no suicidal thoughts. Her death highlighted the enduring consequences of abuse and exploitation, and the failure of the justice system to hold the most powerful accountable. Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel were found dead in their cells before sentencing. Maxwell was transferred to a high-security facility, reportedly receiving privileges that underscored the ongoing imbalance of power. Prince Andrew, despite losing his titles, continues to live quietly in England, protected by the royal family. Virginia's legacy, however, endures. She wanted her story told to educate others, to show the signs she had missed, and to honor the voices of those who had been silenced. Her life and death exposed a truth many would rather ignore. The wealthy and powerful often operate above the law, using influence, money, and fear to manipulate and exploit. Her courage in speaking out became a beacon for survivors worldwide, a testament to the importance of accountability, awareness, and vigilance. This story is difficult to hear, and it is difficult to imagine living it. But it forces a confrontation with the uncomfortable truth. Invisible chains can be stronger than any physical restraint. Exploitation is often hidden behind charm, luxury, and wealth. For survivors like Virginia Giuffre, speaking out is not simply a choice, it is a legacy. Her voice reminds us that silence enables abuse, and that accountability is a responsibility that society cannot ignore. In remembering her story, we honor her courage, we recognize the dangers of unchecked power, and we commit to listening to the voices that have been silenced for too long. Virginia Giuffre's life was tragic, but her story will not be forgotten. If this story moved you, share it. If it made you uncomfortable, sit with that discomfort. And if you believe survivors deserve to be heard, subscribe, because these stories matter.